She demanded my unborn child buy her kids $500 gifts, as if my baby owed her family a debt before even taking a breath. I stood there 7 months pregnant, wondering if insanity was contagious. My name is Clara, and I never thought I'd be the villain in someone else's story. But that's exactly how Vanessa, my husband's ex-wife, painted me. I met David 3 years ago at a coffee shop, where he spilled his latte on my sketchbook and spent the next hour apologizing with that sheepish grin I'd later fall in love with. He was charming, a little broken, but honest about his pasta-messy divorce, 2 kids, and an ex who seemed to haunt his every step. I thought I could handle it. I thought love was enough. I was wrong. Vanessa wasn't just an ex. She was a storm that never dissipated. Even after David and I married, she lingered like a shadow, calling at odd hours, demanding more alimony, more time with the kids, more of David's soul. I tried to be understanding. She was the mother of his children, after all. Lila, 12, and Ethan, 9. I wanted to be the bigger person, the one who built bridges, not walls. But Vanessa didn't want bridges. She wanted a battlefield. It started small. She'd send David texts about how I wasn't stepmom material, how I'd never understand her kids. I brushed it off, thinking she was just protective. Then came the birthday party incident. Lila's 11th birthday was a big deal. David planned a small party at our house, complete with a cake I spent hours decorating. Vanessa showed up uninvited, her heels clicking like a countdown to chaos. She took one look at the cake, sneered, and said, "Clara, you're trying too hard. My kids don't need your Pinterest nonsense." I bit my tongue so hard it bled. But nothing prepared me for the day she crossed the line so far I couldn't see it anymore. I was in the nursery folding tiny onesies when David came home, his face pale. "Vanessa called," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She wants us to set up trust funds for Lila and Ethan. Expensive ones. And she says our baby should contribute." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. Contribute how? With its future allowance. But David wasn't laughing. He handed me his phone, showing a text from Vanessa. "Your new kid better not get more than mine. I expect $500 gifts for Lila and Ethan's birthdays from your Unborn Brats Trust Fund. Fair's fair." I stared at the words, my hands trembling. This wasn't about money. It was about control, about Vanessa staking a claim on a child who hadn't even been born yet. My child. I felt a kick in my belly, as if my baby was already protesting. "She's out of her mind," I said, my voice shaking. "David, tell me you're not considering this." He didn't meet my eyes. "She's just worried about the kids. She thinks we're starting a new family and leaving them behind." "Leaving them behind?" I snapped. "We pay for their school, their clothes, their vacations. I've spent hours helping Lila with her math homework, and I've sat through every one of Ethan's soccer games. And now she wants my baby. Our babyto owe her something." David ran a hand through his hair, his silence louder than any argument. That's when I realized. This wasn't just Vanessa's war. It was David's too. He was caught between his past and our future, and I was starting to wonder which side he'd choose. The next day, I drove to Vanessa's house. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the hormones. Maybe it was the rage, but I couldn't let this slide. Her house was pristine, a stark contrast to the chaos she brought into our lives. When she opened the door, her smile was all teeth, like a predator sizing up prey. "Clara," she said, her voice dripping with fake warmth, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" I didn't waste time. "Your text. About my baby. Explain." She didn't even blink. "Oh, that. It's only fair, don't you think? David's starting over with you, and my kids deserve to know they're not being replaced. A little financial security goes a long way." "Financial security?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You're asking a fetus to buy your kids gifts. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" Her smile didn't waver. "Insane? No, Clara. It's practical. You're the one living in my old house, sleeping in my old bed, playing mom to my kids. If you want to be part of this family, you need to play by my rules. I felt the air leave my lungs. This wasn't about gifts or trust funds. It was about power. Vanessa wanted to remind me that I was the outsider, the second wife, the one who'd never fully belong. And the worst part? Part of me wondered if she was right. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I walked through the door, David was waiting, his eyes searching mine. "What happened?" he asked. I told him everything, her words, her smugness, the way she made me feel like an intruder in my own life. He listened, his jaw tight, but when I finished, he didn't say what I needed to hear. Instead, he said, "Maybe we could set aside something small for them, just to keep the peace." Keep the peace. I repeated, my voice breaking. "David, this isn't about peace. It's about her controlling us, controlling our child. And you're letting her." The argument that followed was the worst we'd ever had. Words flew like knives, sharp, reckless, cutting deep. I accused him of being spineless. He accused me of being selfish. By the end, I was sobbing on the couch, and he was pacing the kitchen, the distance between us growing with every step. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. David had left a note. "Gone to clear my head. Be back tonight." Panic crept in. What if he went to Vanessa? What if he was choosing her, choosing them over us? I spent the day spiraling, imagining worst-case scenarios. But then I felt another kick, stronger this time, and it grounded me. This was my child, my family, and I wasn't going to let Vanessa or anyone take that away. I called my best friend, Mia, who'd always been my voice of reason. "You need to draw a line," she said over coffee. "Not just with Vanessa, but with David. He's got to choose a side, or you're going to be fighting this battle forever." She was right. That night, when David came home, I was ready. I sat him down and laid it all out. "I love you," I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "I love Lila and Ethan, but I will not let Vanessa dictate our lives. I will not let her claim our baby before it's even born. You need to decide what family you're fighting for, hers or ours." He looked at me, his eyes heavy with guilt. "I don't want to lose you," he said finally, "or our baby. But I don't know how to make her stop." "Then we make her stop together," I said. "We set boundaries. We say no. And if she pushes, we push back harder." It wasn't an instant fix. Vanessa didn't back down easily, and David's resolve wavered more than I'd like. But we started small, ignoring her texts, redirecting her demands to our lawyer, focusing on building our own family. I began to see a shift in David, a spark of the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd fight for us instead of against us. One evening, as we sat in the nursery, David took my hand. "I'm sorry," he said, "for letting it get this far. For not standing up sooner." I squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of the past months lift just a little. "We're in this together now," I said. "That's what matters." But Vanessa wasn't done. A week later, she sent another text, this time to me directly. "You think you've won? This isn't over." Attached was a photo of Lila and Ethan, their faces sad, as if I'd personally broken their hearts. It was a low blow even for her. I showed David, expecting him to crumble, but instead he grabbed his phone and typed a response. "Enough. Leave Clara and our baby out of this. We're done playing your games." I stared at him, shocked. For the first time, he wasn't just placating her. He was drawing the line I'd begged for. It wasn't the end of the war, but it was a victory. A small one that felt monumental. As my due date approached, I found myself thinking less about Vanessa and more about the life growing inside me. I painted the nursery walls a soft yellow, hung a mobile of tiny stars above the crib, and let myself dream of a future where my child would know love, not conflict. But deep down, I knew Vanessa's shadow would linger. She'd always be part of our story, whether I liked it or not. The real question was how we'd write the next chapter. Would David hold the line? Would I find the strength to keep fighting, not just for my baby, but for the family we were trying to build? And what would happen when Vanessa inevitably struck again? The weeks following David's stand against Vanessa were a fragile kind of peace. I wanted to believe we'd turned a corner, that his text had drawn a line she wouldn't cross again. But Vanessa was a storm that thrived on chaos, and I knew better than to trust the calm. My belly grew heavier, my due date loomed, and every kick from my baby felt like a reminder to stay vigilant. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, I was fighting for the life I was about to bring into this world. Vanessa's next move came at Lila's school play. David and I attended, sitting in the auditorium with proud smiles as Lila took the stage as a tree in a quirky environmental musical. I'd helped her practice her lines for weeks, and seeing her shine filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in months. But as the curtain fell, Vanessa appeared, weaving through the crowd like a shark through water. She didn't acknowledge me, instead pulling David aside and whispering something that made his face tighten. I watched, my heart sinking, as he nodded and followed her out. When he returned, his explanation was vague. "She's upset about the kids' schedules," he said, avoiding my eyes. "She thinks we're not coordinating enough." I didn't buy it. That night, I checked his phone, something I'd never done before. But desperation makes you do ugly things. There it was. A new text from Vanessa, sent just after the play. "If Clara's baby gets a trust fund, my kids deserve double. Don't make me go to court." I felt the air leave my lungs. Court. She was escalating, turning her demands into threats. I confronted David the next morning, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. "She's threatening legal action now? Over our unborn child's money? David, this has to stop." He looked defeated, his shoulders slumped. "She's bluffing, Clara. She can't afford a lawyer. She's just trying to scare us." "Scare us?" I snapped. "She's succeeding. And you're letting her." The argument spiraled, rehashing old wounds. I accused him of being too soft. He accused me of escalating the conflict. But this time I didn't back down. "If you don't handle this, I will," I said, my voice low and firm. "I'm done being her punching bag." I spent the next day researching. I called our lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Rachel who'd handled David's divorce. She listened as I poured out the story: Vanessa's demands, her texts, her relentless intrusion into our lives. "This is harassment," Rachel said bluntly. "You can file for a restraining order, or at the very least a cease and desist letter. But you and David need to be on the same page." That was the problem. David wasn't on my page or any page. He was stuck in a limbo of guilt, torn between his kids and our future. I knew I had to force the issue to make him see what was at stake. So I planned a meeting with Vanessa, not at her house or ours, but on neutral ground, a coffee shop in town. I invited Rachel to join us, and to my surprise, David agreed to come. The meeting was a disaster from the start. Vanessa arrived late, her heels clicking like a metronome of disdain. She barely glanced at Rachel, focusing her venom on me. "You think you can intimidate me with a lawyer?" she sneered. "I'm protecting my kids. You're the one trying to erase them." "Erase them?" I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I've done nothing but try to be there for Lila and Ethan. You're the one turning this into a war, demanding things from a baby who isn't even born yet." Rachel interjected, her tone professional but firm. "Miss Thompson, your demands for financial contributions from Clara and David's unborn child are baseless. There's no legal precedent for it, and your text could be interpreted as harassment. We're prepared to take action if this continues." Vanessa's face hardened, but she didn't back down. "David, are you really going to let this woman speak for you? After everything we've been through?" I looked at David, my heart pounding. This was his moment, his chance to prove he was with me. He took a deep breath, his hands clenched on the table. "Vanessa," he said, his voice steady for the first time in months, "you need to stop. Clara's right. This isn't about the kids, it's about you controlling us. I won't let you do that anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. For the first time, she seemed to realize David wasn't budging. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was exhaustion. Rachel patted my hand. "You did well," she said. "But this isn't over. People like her don't give up easily." She was right. Vanessa didn't escalate to court, but she found other ways to needle us. She started sending Lila and Ethan to our house with stories of how Mom says you're spending all our money on the new baby. It broke my heart to see the kids caught in the middle, their faces clouded with confusion. I tried to counter it with love, extra hugs, game nights, baking cookies with Lila, but the damage was done. They were starting to see me as the enemy, just as Vanessa wanted. One night, Lila came to me in tears. "Mom says you're going to love the new baby more than us," she sobbed. I held her, my own tears falling. "Lila, I could never love anyone more than you and Ethan. You're my family too." But her small nod didn't erase the doubt in her eyes. I knew we had to do something drastic. David and I sat down with a family therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis who specialized in blended families. She listened as we laid out the mess: Vanessa's demands, the kids' confusion, our own fractured trust. "You need to rebuild your family unit," she said. "That means clear boundaries with Vanessa and consistent love for the kids. But most importantly, you two need to be a team." David took it to heart. He started setting firmer boundaries with Vanessa, limiting her calls to specific times and redirecting her demands to Rachel. He also made a point to spend more one-on-one time with Lila and Ethan, taking them to movies or the park, reminding them they were still his priority. Slowly, I saw the kids relax. Ethan started calling me Clara instead of Dad's wife, and Lila asked me to braid her hair for school. But the real turning point came when our daughter, Emma, was born. The delivery was long, terrifying, and beautiful. When I held her for the first time, her tiny fingers curling around mine, I felt a love so fierce it drowned out all the noise. David was there, tears in his eyes, promising to protect us both. And when Lila and Ethan visited, their faces lit up at the sight of their baby sister. "She's so small," Ethan whispered, touching her hand. Lila just smiled, a real smile, not the guarded one she'd worn for months. Vanessa didn't disappear, but her power over us faded. David's resolve grew stronger, and I found my own strength in Emma's tiny heartbeat. We still got the occasional snide text, but they were fewer and farther between. Rachel's cease and desist letter had done its job, and Vanessa seemed to realize she'd lost her grip. Months later, at Emma's first birthday, we threw a small party in our backyard. Lila and Ethan helped decorate, stringing up fairy lights and blowing up balloons. Vanessa was invited not because I wanted her there, but because I wanted the kids to see we weren't shutting her out. To my surprise, she came, quiet and subdued, staying only long enough to drop off a gift. As she left, she looked at me, and for the first time there was no venom in her eyes, just resignation. That night, as David and I tucked the kids into bed, I felt a weight lift. We weren't perfect, and our family would always be complicated, but we were ours. I'd fought for it, and so had David. Emma's laughter, Lila's shy smiles, Ethan's endless questions, they were worth every battle. Looking back, I realized Vanessa's demands were never about money. They were about her fear of being replaced, of losing her place in a story that had moved on without her. I didn't hate her anymore. I pitied her. But pity didn't mean surrender. I'd drawn my line, and I'd hold it for as long as it took to protect my family. What do you think? Was I right to stand my ground, or should I have tried harder to make peace with Vanessa? Is justice in a blended family about fairness, or about survival? Share your thoughts because in families like ours, the lines between right and wrong are never as clear as they seem.